Central Overseas Service of All India Radio presents readings from an autobiography or the story of my experiments with truth. The reading from the autobiography is presented by Sri Gopalkrishna Gandhi, writer, teacher, and the youngest grandson of Kasturba Gandhi and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. The words of the Mahatma in the voice of his grandson.
If I should be pledged to be faithful to my wife, she also should be pledged to be faithful to me, I said to myself. The thought made me a jealous husband. She could not go anywhere without my permission. This sowed the seeds of a bitter quarrel between us. The restraint was virtually a sort of imprisonment, and Kasturba was not the girl to brook any such thing. She made it a point to go out whenever and wherever she liked. More restraint on my part resulted in more liberty being taken by her, and in my getting more and more cross. Refusal to speak to one another thus became the order of the day. I wanted to make my wife an ideal wife. My ambition was to make her live a pure life, learn what I learned, and identify her life and thought with mine. I do not know whether Kasturba had any such ambition. She was illiterate. I was very anxious to teach her, but lustful love left me no time. For one thing, the teaching had to be done against her will, and that too at night. I was learning at the high school when I was married. Dorabji Edulji Gimi was the headmaster then. He had made gymnastics and cricket compulsory for boys. I never took part in any exercise, cricket or football, before they were made compulsory. I then had the false notion that gymnastics had nothing to do with education. Today I know that physical training should have as much place in the curriculum as mental training. I may mention, however, that I was none the worse for abstaining from exercise. I had formed a habit of taking walks, which has still remained with me. These walks gave me a fairly hardy constitution. But though I was none the worse for having neglected exercise, I am still paying the penalty of another neglect. I do not know whence I got the notion that a good handwriting was not a necessary part of education. I later tried to improve my handwriting. I could never repair the neglect of my youth. Let every young man and woman be warned by my example that good handwriting is a necessary part of education. Children should first be taught the art of drawing before learning how to write. Let the child learn his letters by observation as he does different objects, such as flower, birds, etc. And let him learn handwriting only after he has learned to draw objects. He will then write a beautifully formed hand. I had lost 1 year because of my marriage, and the teacher wanted to make good the loss by skipping a class, a privilege usually allowed to industrious boys. I therefore had only 6 months in the 3rd standard and was promoted. English became the medium of instruction in most subjects from the 4th standard. I found myself completely at sea. Geometry was a new subject in which I was not particularly strong, and the English medium made it still more difficult for me. When, with much effort, I reached the 13th proposition of Euclid, the utter simplicity of the subject was suddenly revealed to me. Ever since that time, geometry has been both easy and interesting for me. Sanskrit, however, proved a harder task. In geometry, there was nothing to memorize, whereas in Sanskrit, I thought everything had to be learnt by heart. I became disheartened. The teacher was a hard taskmaster. He called me to his side and said, "As you proceed further, you will find in it things of absorbing interest. You should not lose heart. Today, I cannot but think with gratitude of Krishna Sankar Pandya. For if I had not acquired the little Sanskrit that I learnt then, I should have found it difficult to take any interest in our sacred books. It is now my opinion that in all Indian curricula of higher education, there should be a place for Hindi, Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic and English, besides, of course, the vernacular. This big list need not frighten anyone. Amongst my few friends at the high school, I had at different times two who might be called intimate. One of these friendships did not last long, though I never forsook my friend. He forsook me because I made friends with the other. The latter friendship I regard as a tragedy in my life. My wife warned me that I was in bad company, but I was too proud to heed my wife's warning. I had calculated wrongly. This friend informed me that many of our teachers were secretly taking meat and wine. He also named many well-known people of Rajkot as belonging to the same company. I was surprised and pained. I asked my friend the reason, and he explained it thus. "We are a weak people," he said, "because we do not eat meat. The English are able to rule over us because they are meat eaters. You know how hardy I am, and how great a runner too? It is because I am a meat eater. You should do likewise. There is nothing like trying. Try and see what strength it gives." This friend's exploits cast a spell over me. He could run long distances and extraordinarily fast. He was an adept in high and long jumping. Why should not I also be as strong as he? Moreover, I was a coward. I used to be haunted by the fear of thieves and ghosts and serpents. Darkness was a terror to me. I could not therefore bear to sleep without a light in the room. How could I disclose my fears to my wife, who was no child, but already at the threshold of youth, sleeping by my side? I knew that my wife had more courage than I, and I felt ashamed of myself. She knew no fear of serpents and ghosts. She could go out anywhere in the dark. My friend knew all these weaknesses of mine. He would tell me that he could hold in his hand live serpents, could defy thieves, and did not believe in ghosts. All this was, of course, he said, the result of eating meat. I was beaten. A day was thereupon fixed for beginning the experiment. It had to be conducted in secret. We went in search of a lonely spot by the river, and there I saw, for the first time in my life, meat. There was baker's bread also. I relished neither. The goat's meat was as tough as leather. I simply could not eat it. I was sick and had to leave off eating. But my friend was not a man to give in easily. He now began to cook various delicacies with meat and dress them neatly. This bait had its effect. I got over my dislike for bread, foresaw my compassion for the goats, and became a relisher of meat dishes, if not of meat itself. This went on for about a year. Whenever I had occasion to indulge in these surreptitious feasts, dinner at home was out of the question. My mother would naturally ask me to come and take my food and want to know the reason why I did not wish to eat. I would say to her, "I have no appetite today. There is something wrong with my digestion." It was not without compunction that I devised these pretexts. I knew I was lying, and I was lying to my mother. Therefore I said to myself, deceiving and lying to one's father and mother is worse than not eating meat. This decision I communicated to my friend, and I have never since gone back to meat.
You just heard the reading from the Autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, presented by Shri Gopalkrishna Gandhi, the youngest grandson of Kasturba Gandhi and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi.